Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Woven. Your two token straights here today to
Yeah.
thank you.
The ones to talk about hell. That's us.
It's the straights.
It's the white straight males. Let me tell you.
Because we're the ones that know about it.
Yeah, we know all about it, and
We know all
everybody
about
else
it.
who's going to it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Sucks. Sucks to be you all. A few announcements. This might be something that one of you might want to do. It's a part-time nursery attendant job here at the church. It's 2.5 to 5 hours a week, and it's watching this group of adorable kids that are here at the 11 o'clock Beaumont service, fellowship service at 11. So if that would be interesting, you get paid. So if you'd be interested in that, let us know. Maybe let Daniel know. No, let Sarah know. That's it. And there are cookies. So that's breakfast and lunch, right? Perfect. You may need the sugar to keep up with the kids. Starting on Thursday, August 7th at 6, we'll be having a woven gathering, and we're going to be doing Glennon Doyle's book, We Can Do Hard Things. And so if you're interested in that, there's a sign-up form somewhere. There's a code on the bulletins. Yeah, just let Logan know. It's actually at Sarah's house at 6 o'clock starting August 7th, every Thursday night. And one other one, we here at Beaumont will be having our Family Fall Festival on September 25th? 20th. September 20th, thank you. If you are someone that has stuff that you sell, like a vendor, if you are that you can sign up to be a vendor there. It's free. And that'll be a fun day. So, great to have you here. Great to be here with you, Matt. And today we continue on our series to Hell and Back.
Yeah, if hell isn't real, then what is blank? So today, we're talking about the enemy and spiritual warfare. A very fun, interesting topic. So let me list some of the names. Beelzebub, the man in red, devil, Satan, the enemy. I dare say those words in the church, inviting him in. And I think that one should stay as a hymn, if we really think about it.
Yeah,
The
okay.
worst person should stay as a hymn.
All right.
So, who is the enemy? Does the enemy still exist and rule over something? If we don't believe in a hell, what is devil, Satan? It's brought up in the Bible a lot, especially like the story of Job and stuff like that. Like, what do we think about that? How do we contend with that?
Yeah, so Satan doesn't actually occur in Genesis, the Genesis story. In Genesis 2 and 3, there is a snake that talks in those passages, but it's not Satan. It's not talked about as Satan. Satan comes later when the Israelites have been taken off as captive into Babylon. And Babylon did have a Satan. The Hebrews in the Old Testament didn't have a Satan. So you won't find Satan in any of the early books of the Pentateuch or the historical books until the exile to Babylon. And because that's where they're introduced to Satan. And so in the old days, before the exile, you read, for instance, in the Samuels, you read David is going to take a census, and all the good people say, no, don't do it. But it says, and God tempted David to take a census. Yeah, which doesn't make any sense, right?
No.
But if you don't have a Satan,
It makes a sense to us.
Well, yeah, yeah, right. That was very good.
They're picking it up.
Yeah, they'll catch up. That's okay. If somebody tempted, it had, since God, there wasn't a Satan, so it had to have been God that tempted David to do it. But we read in the Chronicles, in the retelling of this story that was written after the exile, it says it's the same account. And in the Chronicles we read, and Satan tempted David to take a census. So then they had an evil character, Satan, so then they could put that in that place. Well, it wasn't God, of course, who tempted David. It was Satan. And so that's where we come into contact, and Satan then gets transposed back to the garden. Now, the later biblical things say, oh, and that was Satan in the garden that tempted Eve. But it wasn't in the original Hebrews understanding of the garden, along with not there being original sin either. That's all made up later.
So does that mean that God has an evil side?
So just because they've discovered it in Babylon doesn't mean it's true. So, they didn't discover it from Yahweh. They discovered it from the Babylonian understandings of a dualism understanding of the world. So there are good gods and there are bad gods. And that crept in a synchronistic way. That crept into then the Hebrews' understanding. So now they say, well, we want to have an evil side too. So that will become Beelzebub or Satan or the devil. And those are all names used in the New Testament then to describe this evil character. But it's, I think we took a casual poll in there in our meeting before church, and none of us actually believe in Satan. So there you go.
Yeah, well, there's that. So if there is no Satan, then who do you think, or what do you think, maybe tempts us into doing things that are not of Christ?
Yeah, right. So the binary understanding is there's good and there's bad, right? So everything good comes from God, everything bad comes from Satan. But that's this binary understanding. We have to find the culprit, whether it be good or bad. It can't be us doing anything. It's the devil made me do it. And so it crept into the scriptures. And the reality is, of course, that people are not all good or all bad. People are complex. We have selfishness. We have even a kind of selfishness that's good, right? We're supposed to care for our own bodies. We're supposed to care for our own selves. That's a good thing. But if you take that selfishness too far, complex now, it's not binary, you take it too far and it becomes bad. And we have mental illness, we have all kinds of things that can appear to be evil, and we have people that are just so corrupted that they seem to be able to only do evil. And for a lot of us, at least I would say, those people are not irredeemable. The chances of them changing later in their life are probably not good. But we think that they are also of value. So even someone like our current president, who many of us would despise as of what he does, we think that the personhood, it has value. And so even someone like that, I wouldn't be able to, I'd love for him to be in prison, but I wouldn't be for capital punishment.
Yep. And there goes the tax exempt status.
So they changed it.
Yeah, that's true.
We're allowed to say that stuff now because they wanted the people on the right to be able to promote him.
Yep.
So I think that means that we're allowed to now say whatever we
and that'll be next week. So obviously the idea of there being a devil for like a long period of time has created this idea of spiritual warfare. And we were looking it up a little bit earlier, and like the actual term spiritual warfare is from 1970. Like that's the first usage of it.
So if you grew up in the evangelical church, that might be shocking to you. We would have thought that we grew up in it. We would have thought, oh, this goes all the way back. But no, it goes all the way back to 1970.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and we were looking up like there's concepts of it that go back further, like kind of the idea of it, but the actual like term only goes back so far. So, how do you think?
And I want just to say one other thing on that. You know, whenever Jesus encountered what they called unclean spirits or evil spirits, he doesn's treat them like we talk about spiritual warfare. Remember, even what's called the demoniac, and that was in the Decapolis on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. So Jesus goes across with his disciples, and a man comes that's been chained, and they can't even keep him in chains, and he's naked, and he's out of his mind. And Jesus says, "What's your name?" And he says, "My name's Legion, because there's so many of these evil spirits in me." And he says, "But I know who you are," talking to Jesus. "And please don't torture me." And Jesus seems to have compassion on whatever these unclean spirits are. And he says, "Okay, I won't do anything bad to you. You can go into the pigs." And it's always puzzled me. Whenever he talks to these, whatever they are, it's always with this kind of compassion. There's always this sense of, like, okay, go away. You can leave. This person needs to be set free. You know, and whether that's mental illness that the person's being set free of, or whether there's something, well, that would be another kind of mental illness where they have schizophrenia or something that inside where they have another persona going on or whatever it is. I love that Jesus never comes out as this warfare thing of the 1970s.
Right.
It never sounds like Jesus is like, what do you call that, muscling up? There's a...
Where he like just puffs himself.
Yeah, he never lords it over anybody that he He's Jesus. It's this compassion. There's nothing about it that looks like spiritual warfare. Sorry, that's
Yeah.
just
Well, I mean, kind of going along with that, how do you think this kind of like some of those unclean spirits that we see in the Bible, how do you think that has affected the current Christian view on people with disabilities and how they treat people who have like disabilities or people that they can't understand?
yeah, right. Um, the Bible isn't great with disabilities. Um, the solution in the New Testament seems to be healing, and there's very little acceptance for it as a part of a person, and it's really tricky. You know, if you have Down syndrome, every cell in your body has Down syndrome. If you take that out of a person, is that still the same person? If if you heal things, is that still the same person? So, for instance, you know, Kristen has a number of disabilities. Some of them she wouldn't give up because they're too much a part of who she is, and some of them she would gladly give up and would love to have some whatever healing would look like that science could do. But I think it's really the idea of people with disabilities, that they are valuable just as they are. And, you know, this is queer people, too. They look at queerness in a lot of the same ways like they look at a disability. And so I had a student whose mom said, you know, when you get to heaven someday, you will be whole. You won't be queer anymore. And just the kind of hurt that does to a person, especially from your own mom, but the kind of damage that does to a person, I think is similar to disabilities, where you say, you know, when you get to heaven, you'll be whole. Your eyes will be perfect, and this will be whatever.
Right.
I think we have to affirm people in all of their glory, just as they are. You know, somebody with developmental disabilities, if they were healed, would they be the same person? I mean, it's so much a part of who they are. And so I think those are difficult questions, but I don't think what we've done, that we have done any favors for disabled people by talking about it in those terms of, well, if we need to heal you, or God needs to heal you, or if you had more faith, you'd be healed, any of those kind of terrible things.
Yeah, I feel like
People
there's
say.
still a common thread of the old idea of, oh, you are suffering from a thing, that means there must be a sin in your family. And I think they've changed that to just be, oh, you are not as whole as you should be. You don't look like a normal person like me. And it's very like self-centered and focused on the self of being like, oh, you poor unfortunate soul, if only you could be like me and experience these things. And it's like, that's bullshit. Bullshit. Like, you should be fully accepted, loved, and affirmed as who you are. And even if you do like endure suffering, like, that sucks. And we will be here with you to suffer alongside you. I think that is something that Christians should do better of, is not seek to heal, but seek to come alongside.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that's absolutely right. And even, you know, the idea of calling it differently abled, you know, I think we'll have to see where sort of all that plays out. Um, my tendency is to think, and we didn't plan on going down here at all. Sorry.
Right, no, it's where the Spirit is leading us this morning.
My tendency is to think that if anybody would like to change something about themselves, where they didn't need glasses, or they could walk without pain. You know, any of those kinds of things, if they would like that, that seems like to me something that we want to do our best at creating science that will allow that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really tricky when you talk about manipulating genes to decide what kind of baby we're going to have.
Mm-hmm.
But that'll be a talk for another day.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answers either.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember hearing the term differently abled for the first time. I was like, oh, that was an interesting, way of describing that. And then somebody was like, I hate that term. Don't ever use that term. It's like, well, okay. So we have varying opinions even on this idea.
Absolutely. And I think it's tricky because not everybody is equally abled.
Yeah. Yeah. So moving on to sort of the next question. And I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, but do you think there are forces, whether demonic or evil or something, that look to actively steal, kill, and destroy, kind of like that terminology that we've heard in the past?
I think that there are people that have been so racked in mental illness that they want to steal, kill, and destroy. But I think those people are rare. But I mean, there are sociopaths and people that have been so damaged by something that they have those kinds of inclinations as their go-to and don't seem to have any remorse, all of that kind of thing. But I don't think there are any forces. I don't think God has any rivals. I think God is just so magnificent and so much full of love. I just don't think there's any room in that spiritual ether for a Satan or for demonic forces. I think that people that have experienced it, I know my sister-in-law in Africa felt like she's seen many cases of demonic possession. My guess is that it is a part of a culture. So if your culture has a place for demons in people, then people will become a part of that. If your culture has no place for demons in people, like most of us live in a culture where we would never look at somebody and say, oh, they're demon possession. Most of us would never go to those places. Then you don't find those people because it's not a part of the culture. So my sense is that demonic possession comes out of a cultural understanding of this exists, and so people will fit the bill that's a part of that culture.
Mm-hmm. So like we discussed, the term spiritual warfare came out of the 70s, so that's kind of like we're looking at Vietnam, right? And then kind of like the war on drugs era and stuff like that. How do you think the idea of this warring language has really affected the mindset of Christians?
Yeah, it's all the damn males that we have in leadership, throughout the world. I mean, here we are white males, and yet it's obvious to us that that's a very much a male thing. That's well, I mean, we know that part of the male, whatever it means to be male, is having aggression. So people that have 2 Y chromosomes and 1 X are called super males, as opposed to supermodels, which is a very different thing. And super males, the very high percentage of them are in prison. Because if you get that much extra male in you, you're going to be that much more aggressive. And so, fortunately, for most males, we have an X chromosome to help temper us, so we're not stupid all the time. You know, we also get that tempering. But people that have 2 Ys, wow, it's the aggression is very strong. So, if you put men in leadership all over the world, they're going to do wars. I mean, they're going to have pissing contests, and it's all going to be stuff that females would never think of doing. You know, even like sports. There's a Super Bowl. So what are there, 32 teams at NFL, something like that? Only one wins.
Yep.
All the rest of them lose. That's a stupid system, right? There are 30 NBA teams. Only one of them wins. 39 teams every year are unhappy. And the fans of 39 teams every year are unhappy, sometimes miserable.
Yep.
What kind of idiot makes up a system like that? A male? Yeah, because males want to win. Back when I was young and very male, I wanted to win. Like, I remember 10-year-old Johnny talking to this college-age guy, and it was during the Vietnam War, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't want to go," and I'm like, "You sissy." So why? Yeah, like you're that kind of weak and afraid, and he's just like, well, first you're a stupid kid, and then second of all, yeah, I really don't want to die, and that's what happens when you go to war. Oh, well, that does make sense. You're still a sissy, and that's the young males. That's the way that we think. Not all males, but as a generality, that is part of that side of the spectrum. Anyway, so yeah, you get all these males with their countries. My country's bigger than your country. I don't know.
I've got the biggest country, the bestest country. I'm not referencing anything. What are you talking about? I'm not quoting anybody.
Very large crowd sizes. Yeah, so I think that's where all the war terminology comes from. Mm-hmm. And I mean, certainly there are females that are aggressive, but I don't. Okay, I can say it this way. I know a teacher who was in a department, and there was all this conflict, and the teacher asked an older colleague, "Well, any ideas what's going on?" And the older colleague said, "Well, because you got all these men in your department, so they're always fighting each other." So, anyway, I think that's where all that war kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Brian McLaren says that the opposite of God is violence. And I think it's really interesting idea that violence is everything that is against God. So I'm not talking about a spiritual, I'm not talking about spiritual warfare. I'm saying violence itself is the opposite of what God does. And we have Jesus, Old Testament's war, war, war. And then we have, can I tell you one of the stupidest verses in the Bible?
Go for it, please.
David is, it's right before Bathsheba, and it says, at the time when kings go to war, David stayed home. And it's this idea of they're supposed to go to war. That's stupid. That's a terrible thing. That is not at all God's way. But they had to make it out why David was doing, how he was falling into this pit was because he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do, which is go to war. Anyway, yeah.
So, since there's there's almost like this innate nature of warfare kind of within the body, what do you think about the idea of changing the idea of spiritual warfare into the fight for justice?
Yeah, I think that's right. My sense is if that was David, not going to war being the bad thing, in the New Testament we have Jesus who refuses to go to war, and it's the best thing. He says, don't you know I could call 10,000 angels? Like, I'm not in trouble. I am not going to fight. And so we have this idea of active resistance, which is nonviolent. And Jesus pioneers this idea of, I'm absolutely resisting you, but it's not going to be with violence. I'm going to do it actually in my death. I'm going to do the greatest act of empathy the world's ever seen instead of violence against people I love. All right, so here's my problem. I affirm that. I think MLK was absolutely right in the nonviolence resistance. I think Gandhi was right in the nonviolence resistance. I don't know what to do with Ukraine. I don't see, it feels right to me to resist with force. And I don't have a good answer between what one part of my heart tells me and what the other part of my heart tells me. Here in America, I am for nonviolent resistance. I do think that we're supposed to be doing that. I think we're supposed to be marching. I think we're supposed to be voting. I think we're supposed to do everything we can that is not violent to resist this evil regime and to try to bring about something, going closer to what we would say is heaven on earth. I don't know what to do with a lot of things. I don't know what to do with resisting an attacker, My mom, who was a pacifist, would have said, then I would die. I would not kill someone else, even in self-defense. I'm not there, or defense of my family. But I don't have maybe some of you are better than me, have a better sense of what that should be. I don't know. But I do think that our battle is one of nonviolent resistance. I think that's as close as we are supposed to be to warfare, and it's not a very good war if you're being nonviolent.
Yeah. Do you think there is a strong use in because obviously we can use our money to donate to certain organizations who are doing work and stuff like that, but not everyone has easy access to money. What do you think is a good way to fight in the sense of the fighting for those who receive injustice, especially when we have a community full of people who are already having injustice done against them?
Yeah. I think that a lot of that should be done by we allies. Um, I think a lot of people are just trying to survive, and I don't want to put anything on them. If they're able to do resistance, great. But really, it's supposed to be the body of the Holy Spirit doing the work of protection, the work of care for, the work of trying to give equal rights to marginalized people or people that are being threatened or where their identity's being put down. I think it's our job to try to work as hard as we can for there to be kingdom of heaven on earth.
What about the armor of God? In the idea of spiritual warfare, and to kind of land on a little bit of funnier thing, what do you think about the armor of God?
So this is from Ephesians, and Paul talks about putting on the whole armor of God.
Whole armor.
I think it's the breastplate of righteousness and the belt of truth, the sword of the Spirit, and the helmet of salvation.
The undergarments of chastity.
Oh my, okay. So that's not in there for any
No.
of you who are wondering.
Not yet. Not yet. New translation just dropped.
Oh, shoot. That's in Mike Johnson's Bible.
The thorn in Paul's side.
Yeah,
Yeah.
BK.
Yeah.
So I like a lot of it. I like the breastplate of righteousness. They're almost all defensive. So the breastplate of righteousness is to protect your heart. The belt of truth, I think that's really valuable to have truth. That the old saying about when you're telling a story and it's like, well, it has the added advantage of being true. I think that's really helpful to us for truth. The helmet of salvation, just this idea of, not of saved from hell, but that having the Holy Spirit in us. The only one that's offensive is the sword of the Spirit. And so when I was young, we used to have sword drills, which is somebody says a verse, so they would say, Ephesians 6:4, and then everybody opens up their Bible, and whoever can get there first and read it wins that drill. So the Bible is your sword. And so you didn't do this? So Tawana and I were really good at sword drills. We were great because we had a Bible that was ours, and we knew where where stuff was. And you couldn't have the little markers that had Matthew, Mark, Luke. Like, no, we're not going to do that. So the sword of the Spirit, I think of as in like exactly what you're talking about. When we're doing marches, when we're doing nonviolent resistance, that to me is the sword of the Spirit. Yeah. I think that is the right way. That's what we're supposed to do as the body of the Holy Spirit. Is we do protection, and we do the offense is this nonviolent resistance.
Well, thank you so much. Next week, we're going to talk about what's the point of all of this if there's no hell. So that'll be a big one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
But we'll wrap up here with this from Black Liturgies, and then we're going to do some art time. So this is a forgiveness. Let your soul receive this rest. The God who sends thunder and lightning seeks to obliterate every system that threatens the dignity and shalom of the cosmos. Accept what mercy is available after what we've made of this precious sacred world, what we've made of one another. In all our greed, our deceit, our apathy, our moral deficiencies, may the divine forgive us and work so that every injustice would at last be made right. Amen.